Hello YouTube, what is up, and welcome back to The Bigger Pixel with your host, the Gaming Mandroid, where today I'm going to be doing another TBP reviews on Lords of the Fallen. Now just a quick announcement, if you didn't catch it in our last video, I do intend to continue this review series in which I'm taking a look at the games that are being made available to me for free on Xbox One via the Games with Gold program. So these are about 2 to 4 games a month that are made free for any Xbox One user that has Xbox Gold. There actually are free titles for Xbox 360 users as well, although so far I have not reviewed any of those. So, and of course you get the most out of it if you're on Xbox One because a lot of the titles are not backwards compatible. I'm sorry, yes, are only for Xbox One. So anyways, on to Lords of the Fallen. So Lords of the Fallen is a co-developed game by Deck 13 and CI Games. So Deck 13 is a German company based in Frankfurt, founded in 2001. I guess best known for Ankh and Venetica, although I don't think those saw major success. It's a small company, only 51 people. CI Games was founded in 2002. It's based in Warsaw, Poland. Polish developer, known for Sniper Ghost Warrior, probably one of their biggest series. And they outnumber Deck 13 here, 3-1 in their employees, so about 150 employees. Now, I tried to look up and find out what roles these companies had individually in the game development, but it seems to be very intertwined. Neither company did all the work in any one department, and apparently a lot of the game assets, the majority of the game assets, were actually outsourced. So this is I guess this is kind of a Frankenstein of a game because a lot of different people worked on it. But as you can see here, this is the very beginning of the game, and we're entering into this chapel. Loosely, just real quick, the plot is roughly, it's almost like the plot of Oblivion, I guess, combined with the plot of Dark Souls. And you're gonna hear there it is, Dark Souls. I said it. We're gonna be comparing this to Dark Souls a lot, which is pretty self-evident. You're gonna see this combat coming up right here, and you're already gonna see a lot of familiar mechanics. I mean, if you know Dark Souls, then you almost inherently already know what to expect from the combat in this game. But we're gonna get more into that. The plot is roughly the Rogar are invading this human realm, and they're coming through basically from another plane of existence on the behest of this god who is trying to regain power and control the realm. So like I said, it's basically the plot of Oblivion, mixed with all of the lore of gathering, defeating the lords. They even call them lords, and you basically are gathering lord souls. They just don't say souls, but it works almost identical to Dark Souls, with a couple of exceptions like dialogue, like you saw there. But as we can see with combat here, you know, you have your rolls, you have your shield. You know, it's going to be a lot of sword and boarding in this game. Obviously, you know, you'll be punished quickly if you're not on the defensive, and you're always going to be wanting to take on probably one enemy at a time whenever possible. This is a game that has the hack and slash elements, but you know, really rewards you for patience and strategy and not just rushing in, very similar to Dark Souls. So here we are, we go through, we gather this key at the very beginning, and we move into kind of the main area of the church here with our buddy Kazlo. That's Kazlo with us, the kind of stereotypical priest companion type guy. And as you can see, this is what I was talking about with the Oblivion stuff. We're gonna have this guy, our first lord, our first boss. I think he is actually called the First Warden, and he just kind of appears from this other realm. And they do have these. I don't think I have good footage of it, but they have these orange portals that look just like an Oblivion gate. So the similarities are there. So I'm sure we're all eager to see some meaty gameplay here. You probably want to check out this first boss battle, but I think first we should take a step back and take a look at the character creation and how that works. So basically, at the start of the game, you'll be asked to make 2 choices, which are on your magic set and your equipment set. So the magic sets here are the more important choice, really, the longer lasting effect, because you can't get access to these other spells. Basically, you're picking out one of these 3 presets that are vaguely themed: agility, brawling, magic, or whatever. I went with the agility, and that determines my 4 agility spells, I guess. And they are fueled by my mana, my faith, just like any of the other spells would have been. And then you're going to pick your starting equipment. These 2 choices cumulatively determine your starting stats, but obviously the equipment choice doesn't matter very much because you can very quickly find new weapons, new armor, and then equip those. So only for a short time will your starting equipment affect you. Really, all that matters is your stats and your magic set, because you're not going to be able to get access to any other magic set later. So here we are a little bit forward, and I've leveled up a bit, and I've basically got my build going. This character is fairly middle line. I didn't do much with the faith with the magic system. We're going to cover the magic system in detail later, but I didn't choose to invest in that very much, and I'm kind of middle line between strength and agility. Towards the end of my playthrough, I am still playing this game. I find it very fun. But towards the end of this playthrough, I kind of started focusing more on agility to get what weapons I think are cooler. But I am kind of middle line here with the great swords, but also with short swords and daggers and all that. So real quick, let's just take a look at the leveling system to see how I got here, how I made my character. Well, it does work very similar to Dark Souls. You have these checkpoints that are almost identical to how bonfires work. So you go in here. Actually, I backed out because I'm about to use an item that gives me a free attribute point. But once we get back in, you'll see what I'm talking about. So at any time, you can invest what are essentially your souls, your experience points that you're gathering from each monster. As you kill them, you're gonna choose to invest them either in spell points or in attribute points, and you can see that at the bottom of this menu. So I hold the right trigger and I invest points, that experience, towards my next attribute point, and that is going to scale separately from my spell points. So because I haven't upgraded many spells, it's much cheaper at this moment to get a spell point than it would be to get an attribute point. And of course, you can see basically all the same cookie cutter attributes that you can expect. Luck is obviously kind of weird. Luck is not included in Dark Souls, but you know, agility, faith for magic, endurance for health, and stamina, and increased equipment load, all that. So there is a good variety of gameplay as well. So you know, you can go down the big tanky route. None of my footage is really tanky, mainly because I just can't handle how slow some of it gets. I mean, as you can see right here, this is one of the heaviest weapons I use, and that heavy attack I just did is so slow. It's crazy slow. And I think that's kind of a decent rule of thumb with Lords of the Fallen. If you're coming from Dark Souls, you can kind of count on it. Like, just in general, things feel a lot slower, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gives weight to attacks, but I mean, I think when you get to those really big heavy weapons and you have like maximum equipment load, I mean, that's just unbearable for me. I mean, that was never the way I played in Dark Souls either, but it's a little bit even worse in this game, I guess, because you can really feel how slow it is. Like that attack is so slow. It looks cool when you land it. It's really cool. I've got a great clip coming up here where I finish off a guy with that move, and you know, it's satisfying. But what I ended up gravitating towards was the agility based items, the dual wielding and whatnot, and the combat does work a little bit differently. So for example, with dual wielding, unlike in Dark Souls 2, and it looks like from the content I've seen that Dark Souls 3 might be taking a cue from this game, and it might be implementing the same system. Instead of being able to equip any 2 weapons in any 2 hands, the only weapons that can actually be dual wielded are the short swords and daggers and fist knives. So only the lightest agility items can actually be dual wielded. Any weapon can be switched between 2-handed and 1-handed with the shield. And there are certain heavy weapons that can only be swung when you're wielding it with both hands. But as far as dual wielding goes, only certain weapon sets can be dual wielded. But it is a very rewarding gameplay style. So, and of course the daggers have fantastic critical damage. It's just like It's just like Dark Souls. You get behind an enemy and you can activate a backstab animation, which you just saw there. Actually, I think that one spins them around. You stab them from the front, but you do have to be behind the enemy to activate that. And as you can see here, that's just like regaining my lost souls over there. You can see that white glow. It's just like Dark Souls. It's it's a wholesale ripoff, honestly. But it's not a bad ripoff. I think you can continue watching here. This is a well-made game. I love this part. This really shows how the dual wielding works well. I mean, this is actually a pretty strong enemy, but this guy is identical to the first warden, the first boss that you fight. So his health works in like a 3 or 4 tier system. That's why he keeps like ripping off the armor. But the daggers do so much damage to him so quickly that he just rips off. It just skips through the whole section. He just rips off all of his armor and throws down the shield, and his moveset changes, which is pretty cool. But anyways, let's take a look at the magic. So this is one of my spells, one of my 4 spells. It's called Prayer. All 3 of the magic classes essentially have this spell, and they just act as dummies, decoys that attract the attention of the enemies and hopefully allow you to score some hits. They also have side effects. With the agility one, what it does is it increases my energy regeneration. I'm not sure what the faith and attacking ones. And then I have a more aggressive move there, a more aggressive spell called Stab that will send this guy out and then he'll backstab them. There's also 2 more. There's one that Mimic that basically doubles my effects, and then like a Shadow Realm, like getting your own backstab kind of thing. Anyways, but those are the spells that were specific to my class that I chose. There's also the Gauntlet that I'm using here in this footage, and using the basic projectile spell there a couple of times. The Gauntlet is available to anyone of any class, and it's basically also part of the magic system. So I was using the basic projectiles before. It comes with an explosive spell, and then it also comes with a thing called Blast. However, you don't have to keep with these basic spells. You can modify them greatly by using runes, and we're going to get into that in a second. So you can see in this footage that I modified my projectile spell to have a poison effect, my blast spell to have a flamethrower effect, and in a second we're going to see my modified explosive spell for the Gauntlet, which basically spawns like a little turret that shoots out a couple of projectiles at whatever is closest to it, I guess. And these are really useful. So the bottom line is, when we look at the magic system, is that any player has access to up to 7 spells at a time, 4 of which are their class-specific spells, 3 of which are their Gauntlet spells that are available to anyone and can be modified. To modify them, you need to find the crafter, the blacksmith, which is this guy right here. And he is kind of a cool character, I think.
You asked me for a glass of water, and I could give you the ocean.
So getting into the crafting system a little bit, and this isn't just for magic, this is obviously also how you're going to improve your weapons, armor, and shields, all that. So the way you do it is through runes that basically go into sockets, kind of Diablo-esque, I guess. But what we're looking at here is that, first of all, we have the small runes and the big runes. Obviously, the big runes are the better runes. And then what we're doing at the bottom here is we're basically investing some of our experience, some of our souls or whatever, in order to increase the chances of the rune being a better drop, a higher quality rune that does more damage or something. And then you can look at the runes that you've unlocked. So I've got this poison rune, the fire rune, and the power rune. And of course, as you can see, it has different effect based on what you put it in, the weapon, the armor, or the shield. And then at the bottom, it lists all of the 3 different slots that you can put it into the Gauntlet and how that will affect the Gauntlet spell. So you can change out your blast Gauntlet slot, your projectile Gauntlet slot, and your explosive Gauntlet slot. Wow, that's pretty hard to say. But I think, so what I do here is I go into my shield, actually my buckler called Harmony, and it's got 3 sockets in it, which is pretty cool. And I end up putting in this power rune that gives me, I think, plus 10 to the poise on block. And if you play Dark Souls, you know what poise is. Basically, poise affects the stagger, the effect that enemy attacks are going to have on you, basically. So with a higher poise, so if you had very low poise and somebody hit you with their sword, you'd probably get like staggered, interrupted in the middle of your attack, whatever. But if you have really high poise, then you can probably just shrug it off. Maybe you even finish your attack like right through the damage. You're still going to take the damage if you're getting hit, but you know, anyways, that's poise. So you can see I go in here to change the gauntlet, and this is when I added the poison rune here that we saw the effect earlier to my projectile spell. So that gives it a damage over time effect. This also does affect the mana cost of the spell depending on how you change it. Although you may want to save at least some of your runes for opening special doors or chests like this one, which requires a rune to open. Obviously the runes are predominantly for crafting, but you're going to need a couple for stuff like this if you want all the loot. So we've looked at combat, we've looked at character creation and leveling and all that, crafting. Let's take a look at the storyline and character development, because that's something that Dark Souls doesn't do very much. So we have Kazlo, our trusty cleric, priest, helper, healer type character. And then we have Yetka, who is kind of tomboy warrior.
Kazlo, meet Yetka. She's looking for whatever she's trying to find.
You don't know the half of it, Hankering.
As you can see, this game has some stellar writing. While it does have some colorful moments, you know, this guy Crook here is kind of funny to listen to talk. It also stumbles into just heavy-handed cliches and stereotypes that you wouldn't think. This is literally the trope. The trope.
Let me out of here.
Why? Die.
Jailer's key is right behind you. If you open his
But the game does have a couple of good narrative moments. For example, in this part of the game, I very organically discover these two prisoners trapped, and each calls the other a liar, and you can only free one, and the other one will die. And you actually do get a unique reward depending on which one you free, and it's completely unspecified. So you know that adds weight to a narrative moment in the game, which is pretty unexpected from a game like this. But what I really don't like is this ongoing trend that Lords of the Fallen just jumps right on, which is just leaving audio logs around the place. I'm getting tired of that, and it's in all kinds of games. But now we've seen some of the allies' character design. Let's talk about enemy character design. Well, the most common guy you're gonna see is big dude with massive shield and sword, and that shield is up way too much. But you also got the little guys, fast. I mean, these are your basic enemies that anyone could expect from a game like this. But you have a couple that are interesting and unique. I think these hunter type, trapper type guys here are actually kind of cool, and they're fairly common in the game. They can call those dog things to them. They can drop traps, throw the fire bombs. You know, so there's some flavor to that. And then of course you have some magic casters. This footage of this guy isn't really the best. He actually has multiple spells, but I kept hiding behind the corner because I didn't want to get hit by those multiple spells. But you have magic users, and that guy's actually pretty tough, I think. He killed me a couple times. And of course you got your giant spider trope. Always got to have your giant spiders. What game could be complete without some kind of arachnid? Although actually now that I'm looking at them, they only have 4 legs, so I guess I can't call it an arachnid. Well, it looks like they got little legs. I don't know. And then you've got more interesting stuff like this weird thorny Cthulhu monster that breathes fire for some reason. While I will admit that a lot of these designs visually are not exactly fresh, or I'm not going to go as far as to call them uninspired, but none of it really wows me. And I think with the lords and the bosses, it gets a little annoying how often it's just some variant of dude in armor with flames around him. That's not very cool. What they did do a good job of is create diverse movesets amongst their enemies. So, you know, that does require switching up your gameplay style and your fighting style. So, since this is, you know, basically a Dark Souls-esque game, no doubt you're wondering, how are the boss fights? Well, they're not bad. Like I was saying a second ago, I feel like the character design on the bosses maybe could have been improved. They do have, it actually varies from boss to boss. What you can see at the top that his health bar is split into 3 sections, And you would think that that means that he's going to get a new move set once you move from each section, but that is not necessarily the case with some of these enemies. Now, that last one, the Brawler, no, actually I think he was called the Champion, he did have this unique ability to his boss fight where he has like basically an adrenaline bar, and when it fills up he can augment his attacks with fire and make them do more damage. This particular boss, the Infiltrator, has a trap system, stuff like that. I mean, these boss fights are challenging. I did fail to defeat both of those guys a couple of times each. So the boss fights are there, and they are decent. They're not quite on the same level, I would say, as... I mean, really, the rule of thumb with Lords of the Fallen is that it's just not as demanding as Dark Souls is. It doesn't have... You're not going to lose everything as often. You know, I only... In my playthrough, I've probably only... The most I probably ever lost was, like, maybe 12,000 experience, which, you know, isn't the end of the world. One thing that is cool about the boss fights, though, is that when you're done with them, you can find hidden around, generally nearby, you can find these portals, and you can only access them once you've finished the boss fight. And this one is, you know, pretty basic. You just come in and hear a bunch of rewards and chests. But they don't necessarily just hand the stuff to you in all of them. Sometimes you'll go into these portals, and there'll be, you know, a unique challenge, like a little challenge room that you have to complete to get whatever the reward is, and these are only available after you beat the relevant boss that correlates to that corresponds to that portal. So this one is kind of cool. It's got, you stand in the center. It's like wave-based combat, I guess. It's only got a couple enemies at a time, though, so it's not that tricky. And this kind of plays into what I was talking about. The game is just not as demanding as a Dark Souls player would probably hope for. It doesn't quite manage, while it captures all of the basic mechanics and very similar feel, here's what it doesn't capture from Dark Souls. The true level of challenge and the gothic lore, and certainly not, it certainly has not captured the show don't tell mentality of the storyline of Dark Souls. So, you know, in Dark Souls, they don't force their story down your throat. They don't even explain the game, for God's sake. You just discover things inherently. And yet, there is lore to the characters. There is a backstory. There is a whole city to be discovered. This game tries to tell you everything. It tries to tell you that Antanas is doing this, and the god so-and-so is doing this, and the Rogar have invaded the realm. They tell, they don't show. That's why they have these audio logs hidden around everywhere. That's the definition of telling and not showing. So they don't capture the great lore, and they don't quite capture the combat for many reasons that I can't quite list all of. One of the biggest reasons the combat is just not nearly as challenging as it should be is because they don't lock you into any animations in combat. So you could start drinking a potion, and then you see somebody winding up a big hit. You don't want to drink that potion anymore. You can roll right out of that animation. Just roll away and dodge the attack. And I guess this is why they could get away with having the much slower combat. Because they give the player the option to get out of that, I guess. Maybe that's a big factor, I don't know. But just final thoughts. If you like Dark Souls, if you like Bloodborne, if you're really excited for Dark Souls 3, I mean, it's coming out in less than a week at this point in America. This could scratch the itch for you, and I think it is a well put together game, and it is worth, even if it wasn't free, I think this game is probably worth $40. I'm still playing it, even though I've finished recording footage, because I do enjoy it, and I am very excited for Dark Souls 3, and it scratched the itch for me. And so I think they released it for free at a pretty good time, I think, because there are probably a lot of players out there who were interested in something like this right around this time, you know. So that just about wraps things up for Lords of the Fallen. Thank you very much for tuning into The Bigger Pixel and for sticking with me until the end here. I have, as always, been your host, The Gaming Mandroid. Stay tuned in the next week or two when our next review for Games with Gold will be coming out on The Wolf Among Us. That is a Telltale game, and I'm very excited to take a look at it, and so should you be. So, I will see you next week, and check out our link here to our Dark Souls 3 stream that I will put at the very end of the video.